Okay, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today is a webinar. It's one of our mini series that we're starting. So these webinars are meant to just be a bite size, 15 to 20 minutes about a very specific subject. Today's webinar topic is going to be all about the attachments for the MULE. The MULE is a smart lift assist machine that many of you on this call are familiar with. And we have Scott Peters on the line right now. He is going to be the facilitator today, walking through the varying attachments for the MULE and use cases, partners, and just industries that we are currently affiliated with. At the very end of the call today, we are going to open up the line for questions. So be sure to be taking screenshots and jotting down any ideas or questions that may surface to you so that we can address those for you at the end. And with that being said, Scott, I'm going to give the unofficial mic over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna jump right in. We got a lot of ground to cover, and we're gonna try to keep it very concise and succinct for everyone. A lot of great pictures and examples to share, and we'll jump right in. Okay, so for those of you less familiar with the MULE, we just want to open up and touch on really some of the value points that we focus on when we implement mules, when we train, and when we educate people about the MULE and the value it can bring. Productivity, we see great opportunities for productivity increases when you combine your men with the MULE, reducing whether it's block cost on masonry or other materials, just reducing that overall strain, but increasing productivity by allowing people to work longer and faster, and installing larger materials. Ergonomics, obviously one of the main reasons this technology really has gained success and traction was around the ergonomic benefits, reducing that physical wear and tear. And in an industry like masonry and in construction in general, we're constantly beating on the bodies of the people in the field, and so this is an opportunity to think a little differently, and really leverage technology in a wonderful way. And then the workforce challenges. I think many of us out there are facing labor challenges. I think before everything that's going on in the world, and even now, more so than ever. And this is a chance where you can leverage productivity and ergonomic benefits to help attract new talent into the industry, extend the careers of people later in the industry, and solve some of the workforce challenges. So with that, we're going to get into attachments. So, at Construction Robotics, we developed the MULE, launched it a couple years ago, and it has continued to evolve in the way that we utilize it on job sites and a lot of different applications. But more specifically, again, we see it as a versatile tool for all trades. And, it was originally launched for masonry. We continue to see great success and strength in the use in the masonry industry, but there's a lot of other areas where we're seeing excitement and opportunity for the use of the MULE beyond masonry, and even within other areas of masonry. And that's why we made it the way we did. We made it very modular so that you can plug and play different grippers and attachments and allow you to use the MULE in many places. And we'll touch on some of those today, some of those that are currently ongoing and some of those in the future. So let's talk about some of the trades and some of the partners that we're working with. Just to kind of give you the lay of the land, right? We work with general contractors and developers. We'll talk a little bit about that. We are getting more and more into solar battery and some energy applications. Construction distributors carry our products. So various types of equipment distributors around the country carry our products. And we'll talk about masonry, concrete, and refractory, some of the applications that we've seen success with today. And then we'll talk about some of the stuff in the future. So just quickly to jump right in, contractors and developers, we've seen some great success where general contractors were able to work with their masonry partners and plan to use mules on job sites. We've seen some jobs even recently where they've been able to utilize mules to help with social distancing requirements on job sites and reduce that strain when masons were laying larger materials. We've also seen benefits where the GCs and developers have partnered with masons where they actually specify larger materials, and between the two of them, they're both able to see the benefits of a job that has reduced injury, which is beneficial to all parties, but also where they can increase productivity, get on and off the job faster, and manage tighter schedules by moving to larger materials and by using the MULE. Down at the bottom lower left picture, you see a quick snapshot of our MZ100, the product that was just recently announced and is coming out early next year. And that is going to be a product that has some wonderful features that we've talked about in previous webinars, we'll cover in future. But we also offer the MULE, both the current MULE as well as the MZ100 will be offered through dealers around the country. Equipment, material distributors, material handling distributors, and construction material distributors do carry the product around the country, and we're happy to connect you with local sources for rental or purchase. So solar and battery, I touched on this a little bit, but the renewable energy industry, when you're installing these solar sites, installing panels and really building these solar installations, there's a lot of material that has to be installed over a large distance. And so it's a lot of manual handling of materials. And in many cases, they're not super heavy, but it's a lot of, call it pick and place. And so these are the type of applications where the MULE can really shine. So we're looking heavily into solar and other battery applications, and as well as, I think, other sites like this where they're kind of spread out and there's a lot of material movement. Concrete is another area. We've been able to utilize the MULE to actually lift and place concrete form panels, as you see in the picture there, and we'll touch on that a little bit later too. And then within masonry, the MULE was originally brought to the market focused on masonry, and we have had great success focusing on 12-inch block and now 8 by 32-inch block, as well as now in some areas we're even launching 12 by 32-inch block. So bigger materials and reduce strain on the men, I think creates a great recipe for success. And then in the refractory industry, another area where we were able to look at grippers and the use of the MULE to actually pick 3 blocks at one time, or these refractory bricks at one time, and place them in the wall. So instead of placing one at a time, we're able to leverage the benefit of the MULE, pick 3 at a time, and move them quickly and efficiently to the wall. So some of the areas where we're continuing to explore and we see future opportunities, in really, I think when you look at a job site, everywhere that you see men lifting that 30 to 150 pound item, anywhere in that range where they're doing a lot of movement and placement of materials is where the MULE can benefit. And it's around the precision, it's around speed. Those are the 2 primary drivers. When you want to move material quickly and efficiently, or when you want to be able to place it accurately and precisely, like you place a block in the wall, that is where that MULE technology has a huge benefit. And so some of the areas that we've been asked to explore, and we are continuing to dig into further, and have some grippers that can apply in a lot of these areas today, and some that will be coming online over the next year or so. But things like shoring and bridge and civil construction, civil installation, sign installation, we've had some requests in that area. Just general material movement when you're stocking out a job, or when you're moving material around a job, that's an area where you can unload pallets or unload materials. Electrical and mechanical trades. In electrical, when you're placing large pieces of conduit, or you're moving large electrical panels and you need to hold something in place while you fasten it. Mechanical trades, where you're, again, moving pipe or even connections around. Prefabrication, there's opportunities there. And then within the material production facilities, there's been a number of requests, and there's a number of areas that we're looking very closely at as they produce the materials and then load them onto trucks. There's a number of areas where this technology can benefit, and having a portable, weatherproof, flexible machine with multiple gripper attachments can be of huge value add. And so let's dig into some of the attachments. We'll show some pictures from the job sites, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. So some of the applications that we'll touch on, and a lot of these we've already kind of hit from a high level, but now we'll dig in, show some pictures of the actual use cases. But we'll talk about traditional block, stone installation, retaining wall installation, the form panels, refractory, solar materials, conduit, and sheet goods. So this is our standard CMU gripper that comes standard on the MULE, and it works with most CMU in the industry, whether it's an 8-inch, a 12-inch, a 16-inch CMU. It can work with bomb beams, with knockouts. It can also work with, this is a retaining wall block, a keystone block that has a point in the middle that we can grab. This does have an offset plate in it, and that offset plate allows you to have the gripping point different from where the controller sits, and allows you to balance that block a little bit better. This offset plate is very useful in retaining wall applications. We've also found it useful for things like Insultech block, and other materials that are unbalanced and awkward for the mason to lay. Well, in that case, this is where this can provide a benefit, because you can balance the material and again reduce that awkward strain on the mason. And again, you see a block here that's a special shape block, where that mule can help with those heavier, awkward to place special shapes. And again, in this picture on the right, you'll see the bomb beam. They're able to get in there with this gripper into the bomb beam and still place that block. We also have connections where you can actually use multiple grippers on one setup. So in this case, they've got this is our double gripper setup, and it has different pin locations. You can adjust the width of these, the spacing between these grippers. And in the case of picking a block with a double web, it allows you to pick and move that around and place that pretty easily. And you can see we've even been able to utilize the mule to kind of feed block into very tight, awkward to reach places where it might be really a heavy strain on the mason to be reaching into these tight spaces to place that block, or even getting materials into those spaces. The mule can be a useful tool to help you work through those challenges. We also have rebar extensions. So in the case of working through heavy rebar placement, there's an extension that we can put in there, and these come in various sizes. But it allows you to lower the gripper and create a greater distance between where the controller, the coil cords, the air cords are, and where that gripping location is in the block. And that placement is beneficial when you're placing down, when the block is being placed and you've got a lot of rebar on the way, whether it's in this case, a wider spacing, or in some cases we've been on jobs where there's very narrow spacing of rebar. And in those cases, these type of spacers can be a strong benefit to allow the worker to not have to deal with those interferences. And then we also have pin grippers. So you could see in this case here that we worked with the block manufacturer. They were able to create blocks that are double long blocks, and they created the pin locations in the top of those blocks that aligned with the pin gripper. We created a custom pin gripper for this application that they were able to grab right on the top of the block. Wonderful aspect of that application is it made it very easy to double the square footage every time they made a move into the wall. It also kept their hands and the gripper out of the string line and allowed them to place that block very easily into place. So this was a great success story where they utilized the longer block and the pin gripper in the mule in this case. We also have now created a adjustable pin gripper that can be used for certain retaining wall block, as you can see here. We also have pads that could attach to it if you need to grab a solid block and grab around the outside edges of a solid block. And this is adjustable from 9 to 14 inches in length. And that same technology and design can be utilized for various other pin distances and pin locations. If there's something that is not covered off the shelf, we can adjust it. This is another example of retaining wall block, and this is a great application where picking and placing these 135-pound retaining wall block would have easily been at least a two-man operation, or they would have had to use some other piece of equipment. In this case, by utilizing the mule, they were able to pick off the pallet very quickly and easily, move to the wall, and place this 135-pound block very efficiently. And in this case, you can see they used this offset gripper to balance that block enough that they were able to get it into position as they moved towards that wall. Stone is another great application. This was a gripper that was launched last year that has a number of wonderful features, including narrow cavity. It allows you to place the block or the stone into a narrow cavity, but also has strong knurled fingers on the back side to hold tightly to that block. On the front face, there's a cam that allows for safe grabbing of the block, but also, or of the stone, excuse me, but also has a protection of rubber on the face that protects it from damaging the face of that stone. And again, you can see in this case, these men were individually placing these 100-pound pieces of stone, which was a real advantage from a productivity and ergonomic standpoint. Form panel grippers, we mentioned this, you saw a picture of it earlier. In this instance, they were able to utilize the mule right from their fork truck, which gave them increased mobility and access, and pick form panels up on the kind of the top of the little hill here, and essentially pass them down to the person who is placing the form panels around the area where they were building the foundation walls. So some of these pictures were the prototype version. This is the more recent released version that does have the set and grip buttons right on here, and allows for a handle to be right in near where the form panel is. These work great with Simon's form panels and can be adjusted for various form panel sizes. So if you're placing other materials, again, a gripper like this can be very useful and beneficial. And then we also have vacuum attachments. In this case, this is a vacuum attachment that was developed for the refractory industry, but can be used in other applications as well. And in this case, they transitioned from placing these refractory bricks, as I mentioned earlier, one at a time. These are about 30-pound refractory bricks, and they were placed in one at a time in the wall. And by utilizing the MULE, which has plenty of capacity for moving these, we were able to grab 3 bricks at one time. And so with vacuum, they come down, press a button, grab 3 bricks at a single time, move to the wall, set them down, and then do final placement once they're moved in place. So again, that rapid movement of larger amounts of materials in a single motion is where they get the productivity gains, and then again, not having to worry about crushing fingers and moving blocks around and dragging them around, I think is a real benefit from an ergonomics and safety standpoint. Cable extensions, we have cable extensions that go with these grippers that allow you to, again, set the MULE high. So in this case, if you want to set the MULE on the top of a mast, you can be quite a ways away from the area that you're actually operating. So in this case, the MULE is safely mounted at the top of the mast of this in this example, Hydromobile P-Series mounted inside the stair tower. And the MULE extension, this is probably about a 10-foot extension, and they were able to put the controller and their standard gripper at the bottom of that, giving them free swing around that whole stair tower in this instance. We also have a hook that is now, that will be available here shortly, that allows you to just connect to the bottom connection. So swap out the gripper with a single pin and put the hook in place. And that, again, gives you versatility that if you need to strap a piece of stone or block or piping or really any material, you can utilize a strap technique to connect to the hook, and that gives you pretty high amounts of versatility and flexibility to utilize your MULE in many different applications. And then, of course, we talked about this a little bit. You saw some pictures throughout the presentation, but just as we wrap up here, I wanted to reiterate the value of thinking about larger materials. Standard block 8816. We've seen a number of locations around the country, a number of manufacturing facilities that are now producing 8832s, and there's a huge benefit in moving to that extra length of unit. You double your square footage every single motion to that wall. And the job examples that we've seen have seen great productivity gains. And I think there's a huge opportunity as that continues to grow. And now we've seen a number of areas where 12 832s are starting to come online. And in fact, the first job in the country that's using 12 832s is starting this week. And we're really excited to see the results on how they do on that project. And then just kind of to wrap up here, here's a quick little video of the MULE being utilized to place those 832s on a project where there was quite a few of them used on the exterior of a building. And again, you can see those are about 70-pound block that they were able to very easily pick straight off the pallet, so they weren't double handling them. They didn't have to stage them or anything. Pick them off the pallet, use the MULE to get them in place, and then that MULE automatically retracts out of the way while they finish the wall and get set for the next block. So as promised, try to keep it pretty concise and focused. I think in general, we've got a lot of attachments. We have the flexibility, the capability to create custom attachments based on your needs. But I think what we really try to focus on in our training and education out there in the industry is that the MULE is in fact a tool for all trades. It is a tool that can be utilized in many, many areas on construction sites, whether it's for masons that rent or own these mules for laying stone, for laying block, for laying other materials, retaining wall materials, or for other trades that are looking for ways to reduce injuries, to increase productivity. The MULE can absolutely be a tool to help you do that. I'm gonna open it up for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Scott. Really thorough presentation on the attachment. So we are going to go ahead and open up for questions. So I'll give you guys just a couple of moments to type some questions in there that you may have for Scott based on what you just saw, or if there's any open questions that you have in regards to the construction robotics fleet, even if that's inclusive of SAM, or questions you may have about our partnership with JLG and the new MZ100. So I will give you a couple of just moments for that so we can address any. Okay. One of the items that I'm seeing coming through, Scott, is how many mules is recommended on a job site? Is there a typical quantity that you would recommend for per job site?
Yeah, that's a great question. See if I can find a picture here that might display that nicely. But it depends on the approach that you want to utilize to execute on that job site. So typically what we see is the mules are spaced out about every 20 to 25 feet on a job. And so whether you're using a scaffold such as a mast climbing work platform in this instance, and they were able to space the mules about every 24 feet or so in this project, that allowed them to have pretty well full coverage of that wall. And then there's other approaches. I think that, again, what we offer in between ourselves and our dealers is we really will help think through that execution plan. And so that service is something that that I think if you have more detailed questions, so similar to how you would get a scaffold layout as you go through your planning on a job site, we can help with a mule layout.
Right.
In many cases, we can overlay that mule layout right on the scaffold layout. But we can help pre-plan a job and with our implementation team, make sure that you have a good game plan as you go through estimating and plan to use the mules on the job, and then obviously executing successfully once you get those mules to the job site.
Fantastic. So really you guys are leaning on your implementation team to customize how many mules is appropriate for that particular project, inclusive of the attachments and how you are going to be mounting the mule. So we have another question, or two more questions coming in, three actually. So one of them is, I can answer this one. Will the presentation be available to rewatch later? Yes, these webinar series are posted on our YouTube page. So give us just a few days and we will also provide a link to the YouTube video in a follow-up email. Another question is, I saw that the mule was on wheels. How are you maintaining power in air?
Yeah, so we have, so the air is built into the system. So the air, there's an air compressor on board, so there's always air. The system does run off 110 power, so you just need to plug it into a generator. In many cases where mobility is required, where you have it on wheels or you're utilizing it kind of say in a fork truck or something like that, you can mount a generator right on board. So in the case where our wheels are utilized, and I'll see if I can find that picture, but in the case where the wheels are utilized, it is typically you can mount that generator right on the deck to make sure that it's safe. You can hard mount it to it, or you can always have it nearby if you're not constantly moving it.
Got it. So hopefully that answers that question. If anybody has additional commentary on that, feel free to go ahead and plug another question in there so we can follow up on that. They asked about how is training and tech support handled?
Yeah, sure. So as far as training and tech support, we have, as Taylor mentioned, we have an implementation team that can work with you. Most of our dealers have implementation teams also that can work with you and administer training. There's a couple different levels of training. The level 1 training, which is your introductory training of how to utilize the mule. That's a pretty short training, usually an hour or so. You can get pretty comfortable with basic operation of the mule, how to safely use it and understand how to calibrate it and get running. That can be done right on site with the team that's utilizing the mule. The level 2 is a little bit more involved, and that's the setup and the movement of the mule. And that's where you really, similar to how you'd have specific people on your team that may be really just specifically trained in scaffold setup, you're going to have people that are trained in mule setup to make sure that when it is moved and set up on a job site, it's done safely according to the manual and the instructions.
Okay, great. And then another question is, are the handles able to be changed on the fly? So I believe they're referring to the attachments.
Absolutely. And so one of the really cool things about the mule and how it's designed is that there's a pin right here, and you can see right here on the CMU gripper, and there's a pin right at the top, and no tool is required. So to swap out this gripper, say for a double gripper or a veneer gripper, it really only takes a couple of minutes at most. And you pull that pin, you disconnect an air hose, or in some cases a data connection. So just a couple very fast connections, plug in your next component, recalibrate your tool weight, which is just a few seconds of very simple programming on the machine, and then you're ready to go.
Yep.
And that makes switching from one tool to another very, very quick and easy to do.
Yes. So really it's just plug and play. We have another one of our registrants asking, can the mule be used on a pipe scaffold?
Yes. So actually, in our previous webinar, we covered some of the use cases of how mules can get utilized in different scaffold setups. And we have seen contractors utilize mules on pipe scaffolding. We've seen them freestand them in between and, wrap the pipe scaffolding around the mules, freestanding. We've also seen some contractors put mules right on pipe scaffolding. So happy to answer more specific questions offline, or you can feel free to watch the previous webinar that was put out there.
Great. So I don't see any bubbles happening, so I'm not sure if we have any more questions, but we are almost at 2:30. So to meet our time commitment and provide, quick, succinct value to you, we are going to call it a day on this particular topic. We appreciate everyone registering, attending the webinar. Should you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, to Scott directly, or to anyone on our sales team. We are happy to assist you. I do ask that if you are interested in the MULE, whether you want to talk about pricing, if you have a new project coming up, and how can you kind of wrap that into your bid, how can you get value from having the MULE on your job site and kind of increase your productivity and your revenue. If you are a dealer distributor and kind of looking to diversify the innovations that are currently on the market or in your product catalog, please do not hesitate to reach out. And you can do so, just to be clear, at sales@construction-robotics.com. So fantastic. Everyone have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.